I would like for this video to be fun, right? But the topic we're talking about today is very sensitive, so it has a little bit, no, not a little bit, a lot of seriousness to it. So please forgive me. A lot of people are being abused and they do not even know it. And today we're talking about financial abuse, right? So whenever you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. Like I had to make notes. So when a lot of people talk about domestic abuse as a whole, they talk about physical assault, they talk about verbal abuse, but nobody ever talks about financial abuse. But financial abuse is really huge. It's usually the starting point, and research even shows that financial abuse is very involved on the whole spectrum, right? And there was even a study carried out by Center for Financial Security that shows that 99% of domestic abuse cases usually involves financial abuse. So it's usually the first thing, right? So today I'm going to be talking about what financial abuse is, the signs to look out for to know that you're being financially abused, or someone you know is being financially abused. I'm going to talk about the psychological impact of financial abuse, and then I'm going to talk about what to do if you or someone you know ever find yourselves in this position, right? And so we're just going to dive right into it. But first of all, why am I talking about this? The things that we do not know can be present in our lives and would not even recognize it. So even if it's for the knowledge of it, even if it's to be able to teach others and tell others about it, it's important for us to actually know, right? So if you don't know these things, how are you supposed to teach others, right? So let's get right into it. What is financial abuse? So financial abuse mostly involves when someone else, mostly an intimate partner, is controlling and manipulating someone else's finances in order to have control over them, in order to dominate them. And it's most of the time it's usually a power issue, right? It's usually a power struggle, it's usually a control issue. But a lot of people, it comes from their orientation. It's probably how they were raised. But the fact that that's how somebody was raised doesn't mean that you should tolerate it, right? And for the victims of financial abuse, a lot of people don't even know how far in they are until when it's really deep, right? And so what are the signs to look out for? Financial abuse can show itself in different ways, right? Some of the ways that financial abuse can show up is when your partner or your husband, your wife, well, one thing I was going to say is that a lot of people think that financial abuse only happens to women who are financially dependent, but that's not true. Financial abuse also happens to wealthy women, rich women. Financial abuse also happens to men. So it's not only women that are victims of financial abuse, it also happens to men. And some of the ways that financial abuse can show up is, first of all, when your partner is trying to sabotage you, right? They see opportunities that they know would interest you, but because that opportunity is going to make you earn higher or going to give you more leverage financially over them, they hide it from you. One way that I've seen that this thing happens is that people are in long distance relationships or long distance marriages, and then, for example, somebody is in Lagos, Nigeria, and they are married to somebody that lives in America or UK or Europe, and then the person is established abroad, right? But you're a newcomer, you're going there, maybe you got a job even. So you get there, you trust them that everything they're telling you is facts, is the truth. They want the best thing for you, right? So you trust them, you entrust your finances to them as well. So some people might even say, oh, once you collect your salary, pay it into my account. And before you realize that you're being financially abused, 1 year has passed. Another sign to look out for is when a partner, an intimate partner, your spouse, is overly controlling about what you spend your money on. Now, let's not, I would like to put this caveat, right? Let's not confuse financial abuse with accountability. It's okay for partners and for people in a relationship to want to be accountable to each other, especially when one person is a big spender and the other person is a frugal person. They always, in those kind of relationships, they always find ways to meet each other halfway, right? So it's different when somebody is telling you, okay, this is how we should do it, or this is, but when somebody is, being overly controlling, like when they control your access to finances, that's one huge red flag, right? They have access to your account, to your emails, to your ATMs, to your bank apps, but you don't even have any access to theirs, right? They know everything that is going on in your bank account, your bank statement, they can see. Another way that financial abuse can show up is when they coerce or pressure you to sign financial documents. They threaten you, oh, I'm going to leave if you don't do this, if I'm going to, they use something that you are sensitive about to threaten you to, go into certain financial potholes, right? Another thing is that they also use money to punish you. They use money as a form of punishment, right? So when you don't do, this is especially for relationships when maybe only one person is working, right? And that's how things are. And then all of a sudden there's a misunderstanding or there's a disagreement, and then they don't give you any money, which is like the usual cadence of how things go on in your relationship, and they just withhold your access, or they withdraw your access to any finances just because there was a fight or because there was a family disagreement. That is financial abuse. So another way that financial abuse can show up is when they isolate you from financial resources just so that you're dependent on them. And sometimes it comes in loving ways. They tell you, oh, why don't you stay at home while I work and provide for the family? Or you tell them about something that you want, a business that you want to do, and they try to convince you. And for you at that time, for you that is the victim, you might not know, you might trust them and take their word for it. They don't want you to be stressed, and you agree to it. So what happens is that you now become solely dependent on them, so that, the last point I mentioned, so that when something happens, they are able to use finances as a means to subdue you. That's another way that financial abuse shows up. Another way is that you're paying mortgage together, you're contributing to the mortgage, but it's just their name that is on the property, it's their house, and they're contributing to the both of you are contributing to it, but it's just their name on the property. Or other ways is that this one happens, I've seen it happen in a lot of Nigerian relationships, where you're not legally married to someone, you guys got married traditionally, you've moved abroad, you're married, right? But they are doing a project back home, or they are doing something, they are doing something, and then you're contributing to that project that is only in their name, and then you guys are not legally married. If something happens, it's their property, it's their project. You really have no right to pursue things, right? Other ways that financial abuse can even show up is when somebody is deleting stuff, right? So they delete, maybe you have a joint account together, only the perpetrator has access to it, you don't have access to it. and even when you have access to it, they find ways to maybe delete transactions just so that you don't see it, right? So some of these ways are ways that financial abuse. There's so many other ways, but like in this video, these are some of the signs that you should look out for, right? Is finances are really huge. When somebody has power over your finances, they can now verbally abuse you, they can physically assault you. And now I'm just going to dive into the psychological impact of all of this. When all of this happens, because you've been subdued, you can't live, right? You feel helpless. Maybe your friends are planning to do something, you can't even tell them that it's because of money you cannot join them to do it, or that your spouse has control over all of your finances, so you cannot join them to do that particular thing. So you feel helpless, right? And then you feel a certain shame, like you can't even join conversations about, maybe people are talking about investments and things to do to improve their lives. You can't even join such conversations because you are ashamed. And this thing goes really deep, right? It goes very deep, and it goes deep. Another psychological impact I would like to talk about is that the victim is not able to walk away. It's very difficult for them to walk away because this whole financial abuse has affected their decision-making process, their self-esteem, their trust. They don't know who to trust. And in most cases where abuse is involved, like the whole scale of abuse is involved, this perpetrator has most likely isolated you from people that would help you in case things go sideways, right? They would isolate you. So the long-term impact of financial abuse is that it may not leave any physical scars, but the psychological impact is very long-lasting. And this is why you should know the things that you're supposed to look out for. So now we're going to go over to what to do. What do you do when you find yourself in this situation? First of all, I would like to talk about what to do in order to prevent even being in this situation to start with. And the first thing I would like to say is that don't ignore the red flags. In the beginning, when you're dating, whatever, do not ignore the red flags. If somebody is behaving a certain way, getting married to them will not change them. It will only intensify that behavior. So please do not ignore the red flags. Secondly, I don't know if I should say I hate to be the messenger, but please make sure that you have a source of income somehow, right? I know that a lot of times life happens and you're not earning anything, or you don't have a source of income. It's happened time and time again. It's fine. And it's also fine if you're a full-time housewife, because that's a full-time job. If you're a full-time housewife, that's a full-time job. Just make sure that you are protected somehow, right? Maybe like a form of allowance, or maybe an online business that you're doing, just so that you can have savings, right? And it's also possible that you fully trust the person you're with, and that's okay. But one thing I would like to remind you is that the devil can use people. The devil uses people. So just try to have, if you can, just try to have some form of safety net for yourself. And then it's also perfectly, like, a lot of couples have joint accounts. I've seen a lot of couples that have joint accounts that do not have their personal accounts. Everything goes into the joint account. That's okay. It depends on what works for you as a couple, right? My own is that just have access. Make sure that both of you have access. And even if you're doing it as a result of accountability, maybe you're somebody that spends too much and your partner has taken it as their responsibility to take care of your finances, that's okay. Just make sure that everything is transparent. There are people that live like that forever, 60 years married, and it was one person that was in charge of the finances. There was no financial abuse. So that's why I said make sure you know who you are with, because that kind of determines a lot, right? And then if you find yourself in already being financially abused, when you recognize that you're being financially abused, it's important that you are careful who you talk to, right? Be careful who you confide in. A lot of couples and people in intimate relationships have mutual friends, right? So be careful who you talk to so that your confidant is not exposing you to your abuser, right? Also, be careful of religious leaders, pastors. Be careful. Know who you're talking to. You should be able to know that you can trust the person that you're talking to. And I said religious leaders because I've seen cases where religious leaders actually push people to continue, tolerating abuse, right? So be careful. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to your religious leaders, but just be careful and know the behavior of the person that you're talking to. These people are human too. Also, you can try to talk to the person, but just to know their mindset about these things. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, there are people that are abusers as a result of their orientation, and they've not tried to unlearn certain behaviors, right? So talk to them and know their mindset. In fact, I'm sure you already know their mindset, but just talk to them about how you're feeling, just so that you know if it's intentional or not. If this person says, okay, I did not know that you were feeling this way, I'm going to change. And if they change, that means they really did not know that they were abusing you. But if they become too defensive and then it becomes a power conversation and you can tell that it's intentional, that's where you need to start taking steps towards helping yourself, right? You need to start planning. Have a trusted friend that you can talk to. Right? Document series of things. Like, the reason why I'm saying document this thing is that most of the time financial abuse does not stand alone. When it's intentional, financial abuse does not stand alone. There are other forms of abuses that work hand in hand, right? So document it. If it's that you want to have an audio journal, written journal, text messages, you can also open a new email address and just send receipts to it, right? You can, because in the process of doing these things, maybe you're trying to save up, you're trying to find somewhere to go to, especially when there are other forms of abuse involved, right? You want to have like a detailed thread of how things have gone up to this point. If the person has total control over you, you know that you can talk to your doctors. When you go for maybe a doctor's appointment and maybe there's something that you should have done, especially if you're in a country that doesn't really have health insurance and you need to pay by cash every time you visit the doctor, if maybe there's a procedure or something you should have done and you did not do it, make the doctor know that it's because you don't have access to finances. And this is because doctors make notes, they record these things, right? Confide in your doctor, because it means that thing is documented, that occurrence is documented somewhere, right? And then you can actively look for, if you realize that you cannot change the situation, you can actively look for help. There are so many free organizations that help victims of abuse, right? There are so many organizations depending on your location. I'm not going to mention any here because it depends on where you are in the world. There are places, there are people in every country that there are NGOs. All you need to do is just go to Google and search for NGOs or organizations that help abuse victims, and you will see the people that you can reach out to, right? And before I finish, I'd like to let you know that in as much as I have a degree in psychology, I'm not a practicing psychologist, and so all of these is just experiences that I have witnessed and research that I've done, and things that I've seen happen. So that's the premise on which I'm bringing you this information. And lastly, I'd like to mention that you're not alone. If you are in this situation, I need you to know that you are not alone. And if you know someone in this situation, try to be there for them. Do not expose them to their abusers. Try to be there for them as much as you can. So one thing I'd like to tell you is that you're not alone. Your life is not over. Regardless of your age, you can start again. You can start again regardless of your age, right? The most important thing is that you are alive. You're not living in shame. You're not helpless, right? So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you subscribe, like, leave a comment on what you would like me to talk about